Welcome to the session. I'm your host Marie-Jeanne Paquet, and I'm just so excited to be able to present to you this project that I've been working on for the past 6 months. La Session is a series of interviews with people who are active on the Montreal music scene, whether that be musicians, composers, teachers, venue owners, you name it. And I just really wanted to go out there and meet those people, see what they think that the scene needs, and obviously promote their work on a platform like a podcast. So thank you so much for being here, and let's get into the episode. I'm just super excited to introduce you guys to our first guest. He is the owner and manager of the bar Turbo Haüs, which is one of the most acclaimed and accessible venues in Montreal currently. And his name is Sergio Da Silva. Thank you, Sergio, for being here with me today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So the first thing that I want to address with you is that being, you're kind of at the center of a lot of different events that are being hosted at your venue, as well as your own initiatives that you're running there. How would you describe your role on the Montreal music scene?
I mean, it's actually pretty limited. What we're trying to do and what we have done is just sort of like gathering resources for other people to use. And I think we've been able to do that with the venue and the apartment and the bar, and just making it a space that, we don't have to do that much. I mean, that's selling it a bit short, but
yeah, I agree.
Ultimately, the idea is to have a space that other people can use. And I think that's our role right now.
Yeah, that sounds about right. What about you, as an individual? I know I guess you wear many hats running that place. Mm-hmm. What would you say is your main focus?
Oh, I'm a gopher. I'm just basically going for things all day, running errands, and that's mostly my job.
Okay.
Making sure everybody is basic. Like you said just earlier, you're not quite comfortable doing the video things. You have somebody else to do it. My job is to find all the best people to do the best jobs, so that everybody's in the right place to do, what they do best.
Yeah, I remember even just being at the open mic last week. The sound guy was so nice and just so helpful with setting. There's whole bands showing up to this open mic. Course. And that's not something I see often. I've gone to a couple open mics. It's mostly duo acts, I guess, or solo acts. Having whole bands getting up there, set up. There was this guy with bongos. He's micing everything. I'm just turning up the reverb on certain parts. Anyway, I just think that's admirable to have someone like that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just a matter of putting the right people in the right places, and that's 90% of my job.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing a great job, I would say. So if you had to pick... Let's say if you had to pick a moment or an event that kind of steered you in the direction that you're in for your career right now, do you think there's something that puts you on this track?
I guess getting thrown out of CJEP twice in
That'll do
2
it.
semesters, I guess.
Okay, so how did that happen?
I mean, I just didn't go. I was bored by school all the time. I barely graduated high school. All of it was just very boring. I didn't like doing it. And then when the second time I got tossed out, I was like, what the fuck am I going to do? And then, I joined a band with some friends, and then I was involved in music all the time. From the time I was 19 to now, it's 22 years. That's
insane. So I think a lot of artists don't connect with the way that the school system is built. And I feel that, there's a bunch of musicians that go through formal schooling for music, and I mean that's great. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I did it, but a lot of people don't, and there's just as talented. And there's this weird, I find sometimes, dynamic in between the two. Have you ever experienced that stuff on the scene?
Yeah, it's kind of weird where you see people who are very prolific and able to play their instruments very well. When it comes to songwriting, are absolute trash.
Yeah, that'll happen. Straight up just performers.
Yeah, it's just sort of you're kind of just jerking off with your instrument. But there's also something to be said about getting 5 friends in a room playing, having fun, laughing, and really just enjoying the process of writing music and being able to riff off each other and being able to be creative with each other, I think is the most important part of the process.
Yeah.
So like for me, that's what the most fun was. It wasn't even playing music that was fun. It was just being with friends and like having a nice time. Like you had to be there. You always saw them. Like Trigger Effect became like relentless with how much we would practice, how much we would tour. Like we lived together. All of it was just about being the 5 of us in one place.
Yeah. I've heard, actually, I was looking at the Instagram for Turbo Haüs, and there's some stories there about like you guys touring, doing a bunch of cool stuff. What was that like for you? Like, did you see yourself doing that from the get-go when you started doing music?
I mean, that was always the goal, right? To just travel and do as much as you possibly could. Like writing records was sort of not even the catalyst. Writing records was just a way of being able to tour. That's all we wanted to do was tour. So like,
okay, that was the main focus.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Just traveling and going out as much as we could. So like we would, as a DIY band, doing like 4 or 5 months, 6 sometimes in a year, being out like was wild for a lot of people. But for us, it was like, that's it. That's all we want to do. We're writing a next record just so we go on tour again.
That's so awesome. So did you have like a circuit of cities that you knew would, like, you had an audience there, or like how did that work?
At first, no. We just sort of like went balls to the wall. Like I remember one of our first, and like we were, I guess I could say it now because I'm not going back, but we were always sneaking into the States. Like we would, lie about having a recording contract so we wouldn't have to get our P2s or whatever. And
that stuff is complicated.
It's also so expensive,
Sure.
especially if you're just like, you're playing basements, you're playing dive bars, like you're not making any money. So like for us, it was just sort of going wherever we could, wherever it would take us. Like it got to the point where we wouldn't say no to anything. We would drive 10 hours to play a show and then just drive right back. We're going to play every show that we possibly can, no matter where it is.
That's insane. That sounds like a lot of effort and a lot of planning.
Well, I mean, that's all we wanted to do. Like I had no other interest in my life in any way, shape, or form. I just wanted to hang out with my 4 friends, play music, travel, have a good time.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like great fun. So did you feel fulfilled as a performer? Like, did you see yourself as a performer, or was it more about the hang than about the performance aspect?
I mean, it was like the performance was always fun. Like we were a very like, enthusiastic band. So like playing was a lot of fun. And like, obviously that was definitely a big part of it. But I think mostly it was just, a reason to just be out in the world. Like I tell a lot of people when they ask me about it, it's like I did in my 20s to early 30s, what people save up their entire life and then retire and hope they get to eventually enjoy doing.
Right. And in terms of traveling, you mean?
In traveling and just like being able to like see the world. Yes. So like as a 27-year-old, I was in Poland for no reason. I was in Italy for no reason, just because some guy liked a record and like, 100 people would show up. We'd play a show and then we'd get to see another beautiful city. And it was like, this fucking rips.
Yeah, that's crazy. So you mentioned Poland. What's the wildest place you guys have played?
Oh boy. Once you get into Europe, there's so much, especially Eastern Europe, there's a lot of World War II infrastructure that's kind of like left to rot. So people would squat it. And when people think squats, they think like train spotting and it's kind of gross. But like these are just sort of like art collectives that pop up. They take over this old building and then they just make it work. So I've played like observatories. I've played on a weird old boat. I've played in converted military bakery. I've played in
That's so cool. Okay.
just like any kind of place that could possibly host a show. We were playing, and it got to be a running gag where we would see kind of like a shack on the side of the road. Like, we could play a show there. There's an old van. Yeah, we could play a show in there. Yeah, you could gig in there. Yeah, for sure. So like
we could gig in the smallest space possible.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I remember one time we were playing, I can't remember if it's somewhere in like Switzerland, I think. And we were playing in an abandoned farmhouse that a bunch of people had taken over. And it was just sort of like run on a generator and but like
Crazy.
huge, like a huge facility. And that night when we showed up, they had a bunch of refugees staying with them. And they're like, do you want to stay here? We could ask them to leave. We're like, are you fucking crazy? No, you could just...
You're going to kick out...
You can leave the refugees where they are, obviously. We'll sleep in the van. We'll sleep on the floor.
This Canadian band shows
That's
up,
it.
kicks out the refugees.
And they're like, no, we'll all sleep together. It'll be fine. And then we were like, no, this is great. We had some pizza. We played a great show. And they were like, we don't really do money here, but don't worry. We'll take care of you at the end of the... We'll take care of you tomorrow morning. I'm like, okay, we'll figure it out. Went to bed, woke up the next morning, and they came out with like this huge canister of diesel gas because the van we were using was on diesel. And we're like, where did you get that? They're like, oh, there's a construction site. So we just siphoned the gas from all of their machines.
They paid you in gasoline?
In just like actual gasoline that they had stolen from a construction site. And we were like, this is perfect.
I mean, look,
It works.
I guess it was useful in the end.
It absolutely went in the gas tank.
It
worked. Yeah, it was worth like at least $300.
Okay, so getting paid. So you got paid in gasoline. You got paid with pond bongos.
Yep.
Anything else weird you got paid with?
I mean, the weirdest thing, like New York has like a weird kind of like, from when we were playing out there, some venues would have this sort of like weird policy where shows weren't even really shows. They were all just like mini showcases. Like
Right.
either you were here to see this band, you weren't there to see a show, you were there to see a band.
Right.
So when people would come in the door, they'd be like, what band are you here to see? And then you would tell them whatever band, and then you would get paid accordingly. So if this person came to see band A would get that $10 or whatever.
Oh.
So being a touring band, we were like, oh, and a DIY touring band at that, we were like, oh, nobody's here to see us. And they're like, well, you're not getting any money.
Oh my God.
And like our fan was filthy. So we're like, can we at least just like have a garbage bag? And they were like, okay. And to this day,
garbage bag?
So to this day, like we got paid at a New York show in a single garbage bag.
Like an empty garbage bag. There's nothing in there.
Nothing, just like an empty garbage bag. And I was like, fuck New York, fuck the States. We're never going back.
Right. That's I gotta admit, that's pretty hard.
Like the lowest of the low. Can't deal with it.
Yeah. Okay, wow, that's actually insane. Okay, I'm getting paid with the garbage bag. All right, got it.
But you can see the split, right? So like you have a bunch of people with like very limited resources doing their best and finding a way to make sure that you're accommodated,
Yeah.
like the people with the gas. And then you have these people in New York,
The
biggest city in the
opposite.
world, like could not give a single wet shit about
no,
what we were
absolutely.
doing and how it was going. Awful.
Yeah. I was gonna say, did you have like a favorite place that you've ever performed?
Yeah. I mean, but that was in Calgary. I mean, it was probably...
That's funny. So your favorite place to play ever was Calgary?
Yeah, because
Alberta?
Calgary has this really fun festival called Sled Island.
Okay.
And one of the last years that we had performed it, I think probably the last year we performed it, I don't know if you remember this, but like all of Alberta, just like huge flood.
Right.
So they had to kind of like cancel the festival, but a ton of bands were still coming
There.
through. Either they were trapped there or
Oh,
they were coming in. And we had our show that day. We had so many, from touring Canada so often, we had so many friends out there that they just had this massive party at one of their friends' house. And we played in the kitchen. There was like, I don't know, in my head, there was like 200 people there. Realistically, there was probably like 60, 70 people.
Yeah, but I mean,
crammed in this kitchen.
that's still fun.
Oh, it was mind blowing. I had so much fun. And then later, because the cops and everybody in the city were just like trying to deal with this massive flood.
They're not gonna go and do a noise complaint.
No,
or whatever.
I remember going to this other party afterwards, and it was like straight out of like an American high school movie where there's like literally like 400 people on the street going from house to house, just having the best time of their lives. I was like, despite this being like a canceled festival and things are kind of going wrong, everybody got together to make the best of it with everybody who was still here.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I feel like that's a good representation of like, you just make so many nice connections with people when you play music. I find that for me, almost in that kind of that same way that you were talking about earlier, being a musician is almost like an excuse to just like meet a bunch of cool people.
Well, that's
and
the
hang
whole
out.
thing. That's the whole thing. When people are like, oh, like you toured a lot. How did you do that? We just played. We played met people, and then
they invite you back because they're like, yo, you guys were cool.
that's the only way to do it. So sort of like, oh, do I need a press pack? Do I need to have a manager? Do I need an agent? I was like, you've played a show. Go play Ottawa. It's an hour and a half away. Make a friend, and it'll be fun.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you can do it. Because it's not about making money. You're never going to make money doing this.
Realistically, yeah.
No, it's about having a positive experience and like defining your own version of success. And for us was always like playing as much as we could, meeting as new people as we could, making as many records as we could, and hopefully, getting somebody else to pay for it. And eventually we did.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And I find that if you just like, I cold emailed you asking you to come here, and you're here. Like, you never know what can happen from just like asking.
Of course.
Like people are very, very much more generous than we think. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize. It's like there's other humans at the end of the line, and I'm slowly getting to that realization. It does feel like, like coming out of, again, formal musical training, you kind of feel like I gotta play by these rules, and I gotta like do this, and I gotta do things in that order. And it's like, dude, no, dude, hey, maybe not. Like you can just, like a part of the reason why I'm doing this at all is because I just want to get out there and meet everyone. And I mean, that, I got you in a chair. I can just ask you whatever. I can just pick your brain.
That's it.
But it very much is just an excuse to connect with people and like, get like a broader, better sense of what the community here is. I find that Montreal is like a crazy city. Like people, I've been making friends from all over Canada and everywhere else that just come here because the music is good here. So I think that's really cool. But going back to Trigger Effect, I'm not going to dwell on it, but when I was reading up on the band, I saw that you did your last show at Fufun, celebrating, I guess, the life of Nick, who was the lead singer of the band, and then after that the band dissolved. Did you feel like it was unauthentic to find another lead singer? Did you find that that it wasn't what you were looking to do anymore, was to perform? Or
it would have been impossible to continue with the band without Nick. I feel like it would have been impossible to continue the band without anybody that was there. Like we were such close friends, such a close-knit unit, like everybody was sort of like firing on all cylinders all the time. So to sort of like replace anybody, especially Nick, would have been not just impossible, but like not a thing that we would have wanted to do in any way.
That was not even an option.
No. We were this is absolutely finished after. And we tried to play in a different kind of band and like just the four of us doing whatever. But like, things change, things move on. And it was just like a very specific thing that we enjoyed doing with that band. And, sometimes you just don't catch that again, which is why it's so special when you get that kind of thing where you have people being able to be together for such a long period of time. It's something you should really.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the fact that you guys ran this together, the five of you, like, did you feel like the roles were, like, equivalent? There's, like, a bunch of different ways to run a band, I guess. They can be someone's band and then everybody else plays that person's music. Like, did you guys all write together? Was it, like, a team effort?
For sure. We would go to the space. Somebody would come in with a riff and we'd fuck around with a bit, laugh about. And, like, we knew that something was good when we all laughed. When like some riff was super heavy,
you're like, oh, we gotta use this.
That's the one you want to use. That's perfect. And then Nick would come in, put some lyrics on it, and like we'd go from there and like work on it some more. Okay. And before you know it, we had a couple of songs. But even outside of writing music, everybody had very defined roles as to what they were going to do. In terms of managing, I guess, the band. So I would book the tours in North America. Pat would book the tours in Europe. Mike would run the money because he's currently an accountant and owns his own business. Nick would take care of posters and just sort of like being a very kind of like social and like presence. And then Jordan would also help with the money and just sort of like make sure everybody had what they needed to do. So like everybody was absolutely, laser focused on this thing, which was perfect.
Yeah, that's exactly what you need. I think like having you know, that happens so often where you're kind of just like hiring musicians for a gig. I find that, I mean, it really just doesn't work as well. Like the music just sounds better if the people that are playing it like identify with it and care about it. Like it just really makes a huge difference. I want to go more, like we focused on, I guess, your life pre-turbo. But I really do want to get into how, I know you've had multiple, like you've moved the venue around.
Mm-hmm.
I know that like, I mean, when you started this, did you have any idea how to run a venue, or were just like, I'm going to do this and then you figured it out? Like, how did that come out?
Oh, for sure. Like, I mean, we've been in and out of venues for 10 years. So we all pretty much knew what we wanted and what we didn't want, and what was like, you know, we all knew how to be bored in a bar for a long time, and we all knew how to be bored in a van for a long time, and what you would like to have when you show up.
Mm-hmm.
So the first venue was like actually just like a DIY spot at 1180 Saint Antoine.
Mm-hmm.
We had started a not-for-profit so that we could get wedding licenses to have an alcohol permit.
Right.
And those are even kind of sketchy because you can't actually sell booze for profit. But the few times that cops did show up, they would see that we had a liquor permit up there, and they were like, I guess
they
that's
wouldn't
good.
read it.
No, because there's like regular cops, and then there's and this is their actual name, like the morality police.
Right.
So morality will come in and check your bottles, check your liquor permit, check all these things.
Right.
Regular cops are just like, that's whatever.
Okay.
So luckily we never ran into morality, otherwise they would have given us a hard time. Anyway, so then we had that spot. Building got torn down. We ripped up the floors, moved to St. Henry.
Like you mean physically, like literally ripped up the floors?
Yeah, I mean
like you brought them with you?
Yeah, we it was like a beautiful old hardwood floor that we had painted. So we just spent like 2 days ripping up the floors, taking it to the other space in St. Henry, and re-putting it down.
That's insane.
Just like anything we could do to save money, anything we could do to make the space work. So like, yeah, like we were crafty that way.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay. And so, started off as like a DIY spot, became a little more legit in Saint-Henri.
It was fully, actually it was not fully legit.
You're like, it's still not.
In St. Henry, they have a weird rule about having a liquor license on the second floor of a building.
What? Okay.
Yeah, when we asked about it, they said something about the biker wars in the 90s, and I was like, I don't know what that means.
Okay.
But
all right.
So we had to, luckily we had that original not-for-profit for the liquor licenses.
Right.
So we were able to take the not-for-profit and transfer that into getting us a, what's the word I'm looking for? We were not a salle de spectacle. We were not a bar. We were a social club.
Okay. Yeah.
So since you're a social club and not a bar, you were allowed to have a liquor license on the second floor of a building in St. Henry.
Okay. That's just, yeah. Okay.
So like that was like a bit of like, you know, digging and looking and trying to find different ways to make it work.
I mean, not like a loophole, but like almost, I guess.
Absolutely a loophole.
Okay.
Because then
I didn't want to say it, but
no, we were absolutely like exploiting every loophole that we could find.
You gotta.
And because like we were also close to an elementary school, so they can't have a bar that close, like to
but
an
a social club though.
But a social club,
Nah.
absolutely. So
Okay.
the only thing we had to do is once a year, we would have a membership drive. So basically, we gave a bunch of people free beer, free pizza, come to a show, sign your name, you get a card, and then everybody, you know, writes their name down.
There you
and
go.
then we send it in, be like, these are the members of our social club.
Wow. Okay. That's great. Okay. So yeah, I relate to that. I've like, I have this project that I started like years ago with a good friend of mine, and we basically renovated this old school bus, and we've been just like renting it out and traveling in it. It's kind of like I'm hoping to one day maybe tour in it. It'd be so cool. But it like an old vehicle, and it's so hard to get that legally with the SAQ. So I absolutely feel like every time I could like figure out a way to make it work without having like to tear up everything I did, you know, to make this project happen. You gotta scurry around like a little rat sometimes.
Well, that's exactly it. Finding every single way that you can benefit from the loopholes is the only way to do it.
I agree. When you were building up this business, did anything ever go like wrong to the point where you're like, I don't know if I can do this? Or was it always like, it went like fine enough, like it was smooth sailing?
Never enough
doubt?
that it was like, doubt? Maybe no. Like, I mean, enough things have gone wrong that I was like, it's almost get past the point of doubt and it goes into the realm of spite. Like I'm not.
You're like, I will make this work.
Because fuck you.
Okay.
Like,
yeah. That's valid.
That's been like kind of my attitude throughout the 3 spaces. And even now, like coming out of COVID where there's like still a ton of issues. There's still like a ton of like debt that you accumulate from the business that you run essentially being illegal for like almost 3 years.
Yes.
And specifically, like a venue, right? So like when you're talking about social distancing and like half capacity and things like that at a bar or a venue at a show, like it's one of the most unappealing things you can look at.
Yeah,
like,
I have to admit, going to, and I think I did go to a couple of gigs at Turbo Haüs when it was half capacity, and it just makes you, and it's not the venue's fault, obviously, but it kind of makes you feel like yucky, like you're gross because no one is willing to stand close to me. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
like people take it personally almost. I find like
the whole vibe is bad. Like, and then everybody had different ways in order to sort of like get through that specific time, and it changed a lot of people in like the weirdest ways, and like a lot of times negative. And you're just trying to like get back from that, and it's been it's been a bit of a struggle. It's a bit difficult.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. I wanted to ask, actually, this is like a silly question that I was just wondering, but I'm wondering about the name.
Turbo Haüs. Oh.
Yeah, like is there a story behind that, or you're just like, oh, that sounds cool?
Well, the company that the band had used to sort of like encompass all the events that we do and everything that we did, that was called Turbo Machine.
Okay.
So then everything that we did was turbo this or turbo that.
Okay, yeah.
And then just from like touring in Europe, everything had kind of like this weird like house.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we're
yeah.
like, fuck it, when we take this and go do it at home, it's just going to be Turbo Haüs.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Yeah, that's cool. And the other thing that I when I read it, I really like your Twitter bio, and I mean the Instagram bio. Was that like, I mean, obviously I don't know if it was always like that, but where does that come from?
What, the no moshing?
There's there's that. There's disco enthusiast, and then there's take your tough guy shit somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, like,
is that your motto?
That's basically the motto. Like the space needs to be sort of like, first of all, on record, the no moshing thing is a joke that sort of like grew its own legs and now is kind of like where to the point where people are upset at me because they can't mosh. Like I remember we did,
but they can.
They certainly can. I'm not going to stop them.
Okay, no moshing's a lie.
Yeah, well, it's a joke. I personally,
you will not partake.
I hate moshing. I think it's kind of dumb.
Okay,
and it makes the show worse for everybody else. Personally,
fair.
But I understand that's part of the culture. It's part of like if you're doing a hardcore show and you're like, don't mosh. Like there's people, then don't do the show.
Good point. Yeah,
like,
okay. I get what you mean.
That's what it is. But I remember we were doing 3 shows for Comeback Kid. And they did the first night that they were playing, the place was absolutely rammed. And the guys, like, Andrew's just trying to fucking get everybody in the mood, trying to get everybody going, like whatever. And not a soul is fucking moving. And then at a certain point, he gets kind of upset and he's like, what the fuck is going on? You guys can move. And then a guy in the back of the room be like, Sergio doesn't want us to.
Oh my God, no. It's like you're like, Dada said no.
That's it. And I was like,
so funny.
That's like a crowning achievement in life when people didn't want to mosh at the Comeback Kid show.
They were scared of you.
Not even scared. They were like, no, he doesn't want us to do it. Like, and I was like, oh.
You're like, I have too much power.
Well, it's also got a bit of out of hand. Like if you don't feel like you can mosh at a Comeback Kid show, then I think the joke
too hard.
went a bit too far.
Yeah, okay, that's really funny actually. That's cool. I want to take a moment to talk about the Turbo Apartment because that's one of the things that I think is the coolest about what you do. I don't know of any other things of the sort in Montreal currently, like specifically made for bands that are coming into Montreal to play a show. I mean, I'm assuming since you know the reality of touring anywhere and everywhere so well. It was just like, was it like built into the concept from the start?
100%. Like we had originally had somebody who's going to come on to run the 2 apartments, but ultimately didn't work out. And then now it's just sort of us running it. Like the whole idea behind it was taking the ethics of touring in Europe and then bringing it home with us. So like
were people more like friendly
Oh
and
God,
hosting you guys?
like night and day. There's not a situation that you can get into on mainland Europe. Like if you go to England, it's kind of like the US where everybody's like, you know, they still like, oh, this is, you know, London, like fuck you, we don't give a shit.
Right.
But, you know, if you go anywhere else, without fail, you show up, there's food, there's a place to stay, and there's breakfast the next morning. Every single show. We've played hundreds of shows in Europe. Every single show, that's how it goes. And even if the food is not good,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Like there's a lot of you're playing a lot of squats, so they have a lot of stuff that we would lovingly call like punk rock stew, which is basically a bunch of like dumpster dive bullshit that they throw into a pot. Whatever. It's food. It's got calories. We're good. We didn't have to pay for it. This is excellent.
Exactly.
Like one time, a guy fed us rice and peanuts.
Oh, wow.
Just rice, peanuts, uncooked. Just like...
Uncooked rice? Wait.
No, uncooked peanuts.
Okay. I'm like, damn, that's rough. That shit is crunchy.
It's a bit rough. Wukash, if you're hearing this, I'm very sorry. But like...
Oh, we love you. It was good. It was good. It was really good.
It was fantastic. What a great dude. Like, what a great thing. But like, the whole idea was like taking that and then bringing it home. Because like, we couldn't imagine like doing all this stuff, getting treated this way for so long and then not paying it forward.
Yeah.
And, you know, it never cost anything. A lot of people and a lot of friends will be like, why don't you fucking charge for people to use it? Like you're paying.
That defeats the whole purpose.
Well, that's it. Like, you know, they could just stay at a hotel or whatever. And like, you know, if that's what they wanted. But I wanted a situation where it was all encompassing. Everything you needed was right there. You didn't have to worry about your gear getting stolen because it was safely inside the venue.
Yep.
Didn't have to be in your van. So nobody is sleeping in the van.
Yeah, because that can be a hazard.
Of course. Like when we were on tour, like somebody always had to sleep in the van because the gear was always there. So like you're there.
Oh my God. So you had like van rotation.
Of course.
Oh, shit.
So everybody, like no matter where you are, you could be sleeping in like a mansion in a suburb.
Someone had to be in the van.
Somebody's in the van.
Was it like what, like short straw? Like you got to...
No, it's just sort of like on a rotation. It's like my turn. And sometimes it's nice. Like I remember playing some...
Because you're sleeping in a room with 4 other dudes. Like
or
you're like
some
I'll take
roach-infested house. Like I remember playing some places where like you couldn't even take a shower because the entire shower was black mold. And like cockroaches scurrying everywhere. And we're like, I'm staying in the van today. You were staying? No, it's okay.
I'll get it. I'll get the van. I'll take care of it. Oh my God. Okay. And so I guess, I mean, to be able to furnish that place, keep it, you know, keep the lights on, keep the heating on, you know, that still takes a lot of upkeep. Is it like, I guess, the staff of Turbo Haüs that, and I mean, I'm assuming you.
No, it's just me.
It's just, you're taking care of that.
I clean it. I take care of it. I furnish it. Any sort of money that would come, like the money that goes.
It's just you.
Yeah. Like whatever should
That's insane.
Whatever should be paid me in terms of salary goes towards paying the apartment rent, the apartment hydro, whatever stuff we need. Like all that comes out of like what I should personally be getting paid.
Do you feel that that takes a toll on the business, or do you?
It takes a toll on me personally because I don't have any money.
That's absolutely fair.
So yeah, but it also
it's a huge investment.
It's
a whole apartment that you're not living in. Like people have trouble paying one rent right now.
That's it.
People have a lot of trouble finding an apartment at all. So to be able to run 2 is damn.
But it is an investment in terms of like keeping the neighbors happy, keeping the landlord happy, making sure there's like a nice sort of like ecosystem where everybody is in a good spot. So for the past 6 years, the landlord of the building hasn't had to find a tenant for these 2 apartments.
They've
been booked. He doesn't have to worry about it. It's also going to be for the length of our lease.
Yeah.
So for 10 years, no problem. He has consistent income there. It doesn't matter.
That's true.
And then he doesn't also have to worry about the other people in the building worrying about noise complaints.
Because it's you.
It's me. And above me is other apartments, but having that space, like there's nothing better for soundproofing than space. Just like physical room.
Air straight in. Yeah.
That's it. So that helps a lot.
Good
So
point.
everybody kind of wins. It's kind of an investment that way. But also, like we said, when we were looking for a space, we wanted one that had that would have a spot for us to be able to welcome bands in, make sure they're safe, make sure they're comfortable.
Yeah.
But but on that, like, we're always asking for people if, they find it in their hearts and they want to donate and they want to help us like get this place, make sure it runs properly, make sure everybody's in a good spot and has everything they need,
I was going to say on the Turbo Haüs website, there is a spot to like in the merch section to purchase. Well, it's like you're purchasing, but you're donating to the Turbo Apartment. And I'm going to put the link, in the description of wherever this is airing right now. Because I think it's super important. Like, like people are barely willing to pay for tickets to go to a show. but they don't realize that there's like a whole day and a half that these people are planning around this gig. Like it's not, they don't just like spawn for the duration of the show and then disappear, like it's.
That's it.
How often do bands, like, is there almost always someone there?
Routinely about 3 or 4 days a week. And a lot of times we have bands who are just sort of like, like today we have the band Waxjaw. They're with us and they've been with us 2 nights because their show yesterday got canceled.
Yeah.
So they were able to stay. Once again, didn't have to pay for lodging, didn't have to worry about where they were going to stay. They're comfortable, they're happy, they're there.
Yeah.
And it's just one less stress. Like for us, like I don't think there's anything as a musician, as a DIY musician especially, there's nothing more humiliating than getting on stage and being like, if anybody has a place for us to stay.
Oh my God, yeah.
We're and like at the time, the kind of like the concept was lost on me that we were 5 men asking for a place to stay, which is incredibly dangerous in hindsight. But we were also, we were very nice, very clean, very quiet. We, obviously there's a reputation that will travel with you if you're
That's
a piece
true.
of
Yeah,
shit
yeah.
at the places you're staying. So we were always very respectful, very, nice and clean and good. But for somebody to sort of like take that in is an incredible risk. And we were like, what if this guy kills us?
But they're thinking, what if these guys jump me?
Yeah, we were the problem. Like we were always the problem. There was never a situation that 5 white men were going to get into that they couldn't get.
That's a good point. Like, I guess if I went to a show and 5 dudes were like, hey, we need a couch, I would think about it a long time before I was like, hey, all 5 of y'all just, like that, I get it. But at the same time, that's sketchy. Why you have places like Turbo Apartment.
That's it.
Like
so
it's necessary.
Make it our problem, not somebody else's problem. Like just sort of like, don't worry about it. You're not going to have to worry about asking somebody and making somebody feel weird or sketched out or like,
or not like a real musician or whatever. Like there's like I think it really does create like an self-esteem problem almost, like where you're like, man, like I want to do this so bad. Like I want to play these venues so bad, but I'm going to have to be homeless low key,
Yeah, for sure. So and like things don't cost the same, obviously, as they did when I was on tour. Like even at this point, there's a lot of bands that don't even have vans.
Yeah,
they're traveling in their Tercels. They can't bring their backline. So like we even provide backline because I know that this is now the reality of the sort of environment that we're in. Like people can't afford gas. They can't afford to bring their stuff. Like you have to provide a lot of things so that, the show can go off without a hitch. But when I was touring, I was like, fuck it. We would pile into our like gas guzzling Econoline with, everything that we owned, and we'd be able to go anywhere and do whatever we wanted. Now that reality does not exist unless you all have like good paying jobs or God knows what, because like,
and then even then, I mean, if you're touring for extended periods of time, rip that well-paying
forget
full-time
that
job. Yeah, it's like that's in the drain. I wanted to ask you about that actually. Like, we spoke about COVID a little bit already, and I mean, half of the stuff I've found about you online was about those noise complaints. Like there are sticks in the gears sometimes, but I wanted to ask you, because since you've been running this place for like a decade now, how do you find the culture of the scene has changed? And I mean, that obviously links to COVID. It obviously links to the inflation and all of that, like all the money stuff that we're dealing with. How do you find that the music in Montreal has changed over the course of Turbo Haüs?
One of the more positive things, and I will start with positive, is that
good. It's not all bad.
No, it's not all bad, not at all. Like there's so many more people who are getting involved. Like when once again, like I sound like the oldest person on the planet, but like when I was on tour, for the most part, if you saw a woman at a show, you were like, what is going on?
Oh, really?
Yeah, like even to be in the crowd, if you were playing a show and there were other women and there were women on the show, you're like, oh, that's fun. That maybe will happen once, maybe once every 50 shows.
That's crazy. But do you think it was because of the genre of music you guys were playing, or was it all around always like that?
I feel like it was a bit of a boys' club no matter what you were doing in music. Absolutely.
I definitely think it to a certain extent it still is like that, but definitely not as much. I do think that I went through the jazz program at McGill and whatnot. I think I can count the women in my urine on one hand,
Of course.
But it's still one hand. It's still a full hand.
It's still a full hand. But now that is the exception that there will be a band performing and there isn't a woman involved, which is a nice change of pace. Like the music is better because there are more people involved, more people being creative. There are different aspects of life that are being brought into it, like talked about, and like being able to draw inspiration from, and everything sounds better and is better when more people get involved and are able to change the landscape a bit. So that has been very nice to see. I can't, like, the way I describe it is like the pH of the room will often get weird if there's too much of one thing.
That's a good way to describe it, actually.
And like you have to keep it, like as a person who runs a bar, like you have to keep the pH at a certain level so everything runs smoothly and everything's okay. So like, do you have too many dudes in the room and not enough women? Then things kind of get aggressive and dudes are weird. And then if there's like,
they're just like being broy.
Yeah, and they're just sort of like, oh, there's only like 6 girls in the room. We got to fight for these. And it's like, it becomes a whole situation. And it's the same thing when you switch, there's too many women and there's not enough dudes or whatever. However you want to, like everything just needs to vibe.
Yeah, just equilibrium.
That's it. So like you have to have a lot of different things going on and a lot of different people have to be happy. And then you hit it and you're like, nice.
Are there nights where you're like, oh, we got it, folks?
Yes.
We got the perfect pH.
Yes. There's on Wednesday nights, like we run this thing called Grove, and it does very well. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, it's so packed in there?
That's so packed, but there's so many different people who are there and everything and it just kind of runs really nice. But then you'll have like a metal show and it's like, I'm not going to say all metal, but there's like some like stoner metal and things like that sometimes are like very dude forward. And the pH is like,
the pH is off.
You're like, this is weird. The vibes are weird. Everything is kind of fucked up and you don't really want to be there.
Do you think people probably buy more booze in those situations?
Yeah. I mean, these people drink hard and they drink fast and like whatever. It's fine. But there's still that underlying.
Yeah, it doesn't fix the underlying issue.
It's like almost like this nefarious kind of thing. I mean, I'm not going to say that of all metal shows or whatever. It's just
of course
sort of like,
not.
Sometimes you kind of feel it and you're like, is it a full moon or are there too many dudes here? What's going on?
Yeah, they're just all turning into werewolves. Yeah, the one other thing that I wanted to bring up to you is one thing that I care a lot about in regards to this show is that Montreal is a super bilingual place. I'm a super bilingual person. I noticed that you do French captions on all your videos, which I think is awesome. I'm wondering how you've felt as someone who I'm assuming is mainly Anglophone, in Montreal, running a business, being surrounded with a bunch of, different bands, different, people in the business. Do you feel like you still manage to feel home, even though, all of this stuff is happening with French laws? I mean, I'm thinking, obviously I'm thinking about the McGill tuition prices. I'm thinking about all this stuff. how does that affect the music that you've been seeing?
It will start to be a bit weird going forward, but when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, it's always the cost of living that will affect art and culture more than anything else. Like, it was the same sort of like climate, back in 2000, 2001, when like the sort of like indie boom took off.
Mm-hmm.
But apartments cost $1 and you can live there with 3 people. You can work half a shift at a bar and you could pay your rent and have like $200 in one pocket, fucking a 40 bag of blow in your other pocket. And you'd be able to like live your life exactly how you want it. So you're creating music, you're meeting friends, you're going out, you're really sort of like feel like you're alive in the city and able to be creative and make things happen. So regardless of what is happening in terms of politics, or especially with like things that are such a non-issue, I think, in Montreal, like the idea of like language policy in Montreal specifically, as this sort of like boogeyman, like, oh my God, like I can't go there. I couldn't possibly learn French and they're going to throw me out and they're going to tar and feather me. Like nobody, only the most psychotic people you will meet
will tar and feather you.
Will give you a hard time about this specific thing.
Yeah.
Like as long as there's an effort made and you understand that like you live in a place that is French, you need to be able to fucking speak French or be able to find a way to get by. You can't just be like, no. Like when
I think rigidity is the killer of all joy in this situation.
Of course.
On either end. I learned English, like I guess in high school and throughout my education. I wasn't Anglophone when I was a kid. But it was overall always a positive thing for me.
Of course.
And then to find that there are people out there that will not, as like a hard rule that they have, that's like, no, like I will not do that.
Yeah, of course.
It's strange to me.
Like I know people's parents who are like, we are not going to learn French. I was like, that is psychotic. You live here. It's such a handicap, like to the point where it's like you can't function in day to day and you're trying to like do anything. And you're like, oh no, I'm not going to do it. Like you're a psychopath. But even on the other end of that spectrum is like, a lot of these rules and all these things just focus mainly on Montreal, because if I go to MCB, like nobody's going to worry about whose employees sending what email and what language. It's all French. Like everything is for Montreal.
Obviously. Yeah. Montreal, I think, has very much its own ecosystem for that stuff.
That's it.
I haven't been everywhere or anywhere, but I haven't found like an English musical community anywhere else in Quebec, really. So,
no, it doesn't exist.
No.
But you have all these people, like, so back then, like, nothing cost anything, so you were able to do all these things. Now, with the tuition hikes, which is, an added cost of living, with sort of like the price of apartments, the rules that they're putting in place to make it more difficult to keep, the cost of living down, it's just sort of like, it kills that spirit. It kills new energy coming to the city. You need people coming in with different ideas and different like motivations to be able to expand on what's going on. You can't just have this sort of like, I'm not going to say stagnant, but at a certain point, if everybody's doing the same thing and have the same ideas, are coming from these same shared experiences, like it's hard to make things grow and it's hard to sort of like see different perspectives. So that I think is going to eventually kick us in the teeth. But for the most part, like music is always going to, it's such a dumb thing to say, and so obvious, but like music is always going to exist. Yeah. Like people are going to, if things get too expensive to play a show or to run at a venue, then, like they did forever, they're going to play DIY shows under a bridge. They're going to find every place to play.
Absolutely.
They're going to do everything they can to make sure that they're still being creative. So like, a lot of this
creativity will look, it's happening right now. I will say like most of the, well, not most, but like I've been more and more going to shows that are put together at like either like someone's apartment. I mean, I'm thinking of the Humble Abode. I went to a show at the Humble Abode, which is this great person Lauren's place that somehow, I don't know by what ungodly magic she managed to get the neighbors to be okay with it, but like I've seen shows happen there. I mean, there's shows happening at Maison a lot that are like beautiful initiatives. I mean, you know, sometimes it's impossible to book a venue and people want to play anyway. So yeah, I think you're right.
You're always going to find a place. And like it all just goes back. And like when I think about like touring in Europe, like there were just all the places that we were playing were just abandoned places that people had the sort of like gumption and the sort of the wherewithal, and that they really wanted to do it. They really thought like this is an important thing, to the point where even the state was like, oh yeah, you can just have that place. Like like
okay, actually it was meant to be like that.
Yeah, like in the middle of Berlin, one of the most like densely populated places on earth. Rents are through the roof. There's this huge, at least there was, I'm not quite sure if it's still there. There's this huge fucking place called Kopi. Like it's it was an old hotel, absolutely massive, right downtown. And they were like, we don't pay rent here. It's ours. It's ours. Fuck you. And the city was like, and there's been a struggle. And I think I read a few years ago that there were more issues coming down their way. But for the longest time, just operating in this huge city,
humongous
this huge
building,
plot of land, just being like, no, it's just a bunch of punks. And they're just bowling and having shows. It was awesome. So like that's the kind of thing, that's the kind of like energy.
Yeah, music will not die, but I see what you mean, that it might get harder to, you know, to have some more like, I guess, organized.
Yeah, and you always want, like I said, the idea is always to bring in more energy, more different ideas, more people. Like you want to involve as many people as you possibly can, which is why it's so frustrating for me to be in the city that we're in, where we are, where, you know, people move here for the art, for the culture, to be somewhere where there are things going on, and their only thing that they bring to the table is to make things worse by like calling in noise complaints and complaining and doing all this stuff. It's like, you should be getting involved. There are things
like make something happen.
That's it. Or just participate. Come watch. You're going to have a good time. You can stay home and you can watch, you know, The Office for the fucking millionth time in your fucking condo. Or you can go outside, maybe go to the theater, maybe come to our venue, maybe literally do anything, anywhere, at any time. You live in,
like, you have free will. You can just up and go. Like,
but also just fucking participate. Fucking participate. We want everybody to get involved in these things. Like, it's good for everybody for you to fucking participate. Don't handicap everybody with your bullshit. If you don't fucking like it, go to fucking live next to a golf course or God knows what. Like, fuck you.
Go to a quaint little.
Like, I don't give a shit. Like, if this is not what you want, then you're not who we want. And
you're not in the right place. I mean, you know,
you're in the Quartier du Spectacle. Fuck you. I understand that there's also an issue with housing, of course, and everybody is hyper
obviously,
aware.
But there's there's places that are, it's called Quartier du Spectacle. It's dedicated, you know, like, think about it for more than a second.
And you bought a fucking condo, so it's not like you're strapped for cash. You have the resources to make these things happen. You're not renting.
It's not like it's easy to buy a condo in Quartier du Spectacle.
You're not a single mom with 3 kids, like next to some sort of like fucking DIY punk house who's like, my kids want to go to sleep. You shouldn't be doing this. It's a fucking residential neighborhood. Absolutely
fair.
100%.
Yeah.
Fantastic. If you are moving to where I am, where there's nothing but bars up and down the street, dude, fucking move.
Like, figure it out.
The rent is fucking $1,800 a pop for a 1-bedroom where I fucking live. It's $1,800. Dude, it's not fucking cheap. You could go to Verdun. It's nice and quiet. And you could just have your life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair enough. I feel like that. I was going to ask you, what do you think the Montreal scene needs right now? But I feel like that about like sums it up. Like, people participating.
That's it.
And then, is there anything else you think that we need right now?
No, I think that's just it. Everybody just, if you want to participate, absolutely. Start a band. Do whatever you want. Like, open a venue. There's so many things that people can be doing to be creative and to have fun. And, like, have fun doing it. It's just not, everything is just so, a lot of times can be very rigid, and a lot of times it's just sort of like, on my end, I have to be focused on making money. I have to pay my employees. I have to pay for their insurance. I have to pay for all this stuff. And like, so in my mind, a lot of that, becomes the focus. And, it's up to the people who are making music, who are being creative, to just keep doing it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's completely valid. I have 2 little questions that I want to finish the interview off with. The first one is, do you have a favorite album that you're listening to currently that you really like and that would be your recommendation for like this week or whatnot?
Oh, I'm still stuck on that fucking Viagra Boys record.
Oh my God.
Like, I cannot stop listening to it. But like right now, also Montreal's a ton of cool stuff that's coming out. Like that Puffer record, Béton Armé, Mulch is also a very good band. There's so much cool stuff coming out of like the DIY, like punk hardcore scene in Montreal. Like, just go to a show that the new, like, Phase is writing a new record. All of it is just coming out. It's so much fun. It's so good. It's at like its peak right now. So if there's ever a time you wanted to dive into like Montreal punk, hardcore, and metal, like, this is the fucking time. The shows are packed. Everybody's super cool. There's so much stuff going on. So yeah, like even like this week on Friday, I mean, this is probably not going to come up before that, but like,
that's fine.
We have Puffer, Phase, Mulch, and Psychic Armor who are playing, who are all fantastic bands. It's so good. So like, yeah, go to a local gig. You'll be blown away.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And the last thing I wanted to ask you today is, I'm starting, obviously, this project is in its very beginnings, but I really do want to create like a well-balanced, with the correct pH description of where we're at with music in Montreal right now. And I find that it's the best resources to ask for where I can get that information are the people that I'm interviewing. So if I had to, if you had to pick like the next guest to come here and have a discussion with me about what's going on right now, who would you recommend me?
Oh, I would speak to those boys in Grove, Shane, Marcus, and Shem.
Oh,
they are their event went from, I remember we started 4 years ago, maybe 20 or 30 people would show up. It'd be difficult to get going, but we kept at it. And now we have a lineup going from our front
crazy
door all the way to Ontario. And they've been absolutely hustling. And when it comes to sort of like bringing in so many different people in the community, like, they are the perfect people to speak to. Absolute wonderful people and smart as fuck.
Okay, perfect. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Sergio, for taking the time to talk with me. I've had a blast. And I'm just hoping that this discussion can inspire people to go to more gigs, make more gigs, and just like keep making music happen. I will be linking the link to go and donate to the Turbo Apartment in the description. And yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. It was really nice.